Welcome back. Today I want to do a little 2020 recap and talk about some of the products I reviewed in 2020, some of the things that maybe I picked up in 2019 that I still use today, a lot of the things that I talked about in 2020 that I still used throughout the year and will probably continue using through 2021. So let's talk about some foundational things, some things that are common to any set that might be in your ears. And we'll start off with DACs. So this is the $10 Apple USB-C to headphone adapter. If you want something that's very neutral, very cost effective, I use it to just have a consistent sound across phones. Whether I have my main phone or other phones, it's nice to have this DAC around because I just keep it on my desk, and when a set comes in, I'll probably play it on that one first. This is the Tempotec Sonata HD Pro. It's a little bit of a step up from this, I believe. I mean, this is really almost neutral. This one is slightly warm, not much at all. But it's actually I think I actually like the sound of this one a little better because it's just a little warmer, just a tiny bit. Plus, it has hardware buttons and it works really well with USB Audio Player Pro. This is my main little box. This is the Quedlix 5K. It's got its own battery, so these are self-powered from the USB port. This one has its own battery and will supply even more power because it has a 3.5 millimeter and 2.5 millimeter balanced output. So super nice, and it's even warmer than these two. So when you switch back and forth to these two, even the ES100, I have an ES100, and that would probably be about right here. It's not quite as warm as the Quedlix, but again, it has a 2.5 millimeter out, and it's really nice as well. But this year I picked up the Quedlix and I stuck with it. So music-wise, this is a LG Velvet phone I picked up because I was on a super promotion from my carrier, but it's kind of handy to use for music because it has dual screens. And so on the right side, this is USB Audio Player Pro, for those who aren't familiar with it. Inside of USB Audio Player Pro, it has integrations with TIDAL, and this is Qobuz, Qobuz. I don't know how to pronounce it, but that's what that is. So this is something I've been trying in December. It is primarily streaming FLAC music, so lossless streaming, and it also integrates into USB Audio Player Pro, so you can do this, and then you can pull up your same playlist and favorite music from inside of USB Audio Player Pro. And USB Audio Player Pro recognizes these three DACs, and it has its own audio path for high quality audio or bit perfect. Super nice system when it all works well together. So that's that. Cable wise, I stuck with, I think the nice pair that I picked up this year. This is the pure silver limpid cable from EAR, and this is the Rhyme cable, which also this is UPOCC copper. So these two came out as a pair a little while back. Picked them up, and I continue to use both of these. I think they're both really nice and a bargain for what they are. So I will continue using those. I know EAR just came out with something called Warmth, which I think is going to be another OCC cable, not a Litz cable, but just a regular OCC cable. One I picked up on 11/11. This is the NiceHCK LitzOCC cable, which is actually super nice as well. I really like this one. So I don't think the new EAR one is the same as this. It looks similar, but I don't think it's the same. So I'll have to see how. The Warmth was a bit more expensive. This one, I think, was about $13-ish or $15-ish. And the Warmth, I believe, is a little more money at this point, but I definitely like this one as well. And then from 2019, this is the Faaeal Hibiscus cable, and I do continue using this one as well. This is the MMCX version. So that's it for some of the foundational things. So except for ear tips, I do use the Sedna Ear Fit. These are the regular ones. These are KZ flip tips if you're interested in not so much picking these up right away, but want to try something with a wider bore hole. I do suggest trying some flip tips if you have, especially if you have some KZ normal tips hanging around. You can flip those. I have a video on that, so look that one up. And I do have some shorts on order, which I will try with a TWS when it arrives. So hang on, we'll switch this out for the budget IEMs. So these are the budget picks, the ones that I kept on going back to this year, things even from last year. So starting here, these are actually not from last year, but these are the purple BLON BL03s. And I originally thought the purple was a bit of a dumb idea, but after I got them, I think I actually always grab the purple now instead of the regular gunmetal ones that I have. It's quite unique looking, sounds exactly like the O3, but you know, one of those things that I didn't think was a great idea, but I loved it once it arrived. So second one, so BLON also came out with the BL01 this year, and this one, I love this one, but you really need some kind of power. I don't necessarily like it straight out of a phone. I saw Bad Guy Good Audio Reviews did a 2-minute review of this one and said he sort of ended it in the same way. It really likes a lot of power, and it sounds really, really good when you give it a bunch of power. So again, this is one that a lot of people really liked, but think about your source. And if you just have a normal phone, I would probably stick with the BL03s at this point. So the second sort of surprise of 2020 were these EDXs. So this is the KZ EDX. This one, you know, for a while it was about $6 on AliExpress. And no matter how many times I tell people to go look at the EDX, I think they look at the price and say, oh, it's $6, it must be trash. And he's just hyping it for no reason. But, you know, trust me, no one sends you $6 pair of IEMs and says, these have to sound amazing. You better be a 5-star review. It just doesn't happen. So, yes, I really like the EDX. And yes, especially if you're looking at the ZSN Pro X or the ZSTX and you just want to try a KZ for the first time, I highly suggest the EDX. It is surprisingly good, as someone just commented, I think 2 days ago. Someone said the same exact thing. It's like, oh yeah, these actually are surprisingly good. So do give these a shot. So next, one of these recent reviews that I did, these are the TRN STMs. So last year, TRN had another low-end model called the ST1. So this one is not exactly an ST1 replacement, but I do prefer it over the ST1, and I think the ST1 would have dropped off my list, and I would pick up the STM instead. It's not. I think it's a bit more expensive. I bought this one on 11/11, and it was, I think, the same exact price as the ST1, but these days the STM is probably a bit more than the ST1, but I think just because the STM brings that wide, almost taller soundstage from the VX and the BA8, this one is my pick over the ST1 simply for that reason. Even if the sound was exactly the same exact signature, just having it a bit wider makes a huge difference for separation and imaging, and you know, having all that space for the vocals just makes it sound really amazing for the price. So ST1 probably dropped off the list this year. I think I replaced it with the STM. With the EDX, I think I would say the same thing about the ZSN Pro X and the ZSTX. I didn't include those here because I think people are better off starting with the EDX. I think it's really good. So another budget model, this is the EAR KB04. I call these the mini diamonds, I mean. So they look sort of reminiscent of the diamond. They're not quite, they're not, you know, a $20 version of the diamond, but they do have this sort of hard and fast driver similar to that diamond sound. That's really nice. And I know some people in reviews kind of picked the KB04 and said it was really, really nice. And I think I do think it's really nice, and I don't think enough people really pick this one up, but it is really nice. And so I would pick the KB04 over the KS2. So even though there were a million reviews for the KS2, I would still pick the KB04 over, because the KS2 is sort of more in line with the TRN STM. It's sort of a standard V-shape signature. Had a wide soundstage, but I actually prefer the vocal location and imaging on the STM over the KS2. But the KS2 is nice for its price, but for my music and playlist, I go back to the KB04 over the KS2. So one that I haven't reviewed yet that I picked up recently is this. This is the SENFER KP 580, I mean. So this is an MMCX new SENFER. So SENFER came out with a MT300 and then this KP 580, and maybe there was another model in there as well. So there's a person on HeadFi who was talking about this one. His name was Node30, and he was talking about this for a while. And I sort of ordered it just on a chance that it would sound somewhat like the DT6 or the DT6 Pro. And it almost splits the difference. It's better than the DT6 in that the signature is more balanced, but it retains a lot of that heavy bass of the DT6, but it's just not overwhelming. It's not crushing sub bass, but it is most definitely a rumbler, and it is tons of fun. And I will do a review on it soon, but between the SENFER and the EDX and the STM, I think those were my three big surprises in the budget area, things I didn't expect to sound as good as they did. Most definitely surprised me on how good they sound. And so I'll get to that one shortly when I have some more time. So that's it for the budget. Hang on, let me do some mid-range rearranging here. So in the mid-range, and I would call that, $50-ish, in that kind of ballpark, 40 to 50, maybe 40 to 60, somewhere in that ballpark. So there was a lot of models in that range. I didn't review all of them. There are some that I didn't get to. Open Heart Resin is one that I was looking at. The HZ Sound Heart Mirror is another one. I think other reviewers have gone through a more comprehensive list, but I can only go through the ones that I actually had my hands on. So that will start with these. So the CCA CA16, this was sort of my first experience of a high driver count IEM that actually sounded like a high driver count IEM. It really brings detail and resolution to a level that was above even the ZSX at the time. So it was sort of my first experience of, so KZ or CCA can actually add a driver and you can actually hear a benefit to it. And that was what the CA16 really did for me at the time. So it wasn't, out of this group of four, maybe not my favorite. It's got a slightly warmer signature. It's a bassier signature. The trebles rolled off a little bit more. I never really thought it was as cohesive as it should have been because it's bassy, then you get the mids, and there's kind of a disjointed piece in there. So I still like it, and some people are really going to love that darker, warmer signature, and to get that resolution and almost a vividness to that sound. It's really nice. So I don't want to nitpick that one too much. So when I got to the KZ ZAX, these two were really strange because this one sounded more like a KZ, and this one was this more controlled, more refined, really nice detail and resolution, but it sounded what people were more expecting to be a CCA. But this is the KZ ZAX, and I really like this one a lot, and this one's going to hang around until KZ just decides to replace it with something better. But these two were just kind of the odd couple because they felt like the companies were reversed, but they both have a lot of great things about them. And I don't know if I would necessarily buy both of them, but most definitely pick up one of them. So this is the BLON BL05S. This is the revamped version of the 5. The S version was the retuned version. And every time I play the BL01 and I can't get the fit right, I'm like, did the O5S really fit as well as what I think it did in my mind? And it really does. It's a great sounding, great fitting, very capable IEM that not too many people picked up because of the original BL05, which had this really hot upper end. So they kind of brought it down with the O5S and retuned it, and it sounds more in line with where the O3 was. But the interesting thing about the O5S to me was that it felt like this was stretching a dynamic driver to its edge of detail and resolution. And it sounds great, but then when you hear these two, I sort of felt like, so this is why hybrids exist, because they go a little bit further than this one was capable of doing. And this one sounds really, really good, but, on some level, I think these two sound better just because of the hybrid driver as opposed to a single dynamic driver. But, I will keep this one around just because it fits me so well and it sounds great. So that's the BL05S. And then here is the one that lots of people complained about. This is the TRN VX. So again, this one reminded me a lot of the CA16. This one really brought resolution and detail to, whether you call it the V90 successor, or maybe it's a totally new thing. But again, this one really brought detail and resolution. Even I remember this one being $54 or so when it was on sale. And it's a really amazing IEM, especially TRN soundstage still gets me. I still pick this one up simply because that soundstage is just really good. I mean, it's only second to, I think, the BLON BL03. I think that edges it out just slightly, but TRN did a really amazing job on that soundstage and imaging and staging. Really, really nice on the VX and even on the BA8 as well. But this one suffered kind of a similar fate of the O5S, in that people said, oh, it's got a super hot upper mid or treble, whatever it was. But, either you can put a piece of tape over the vent hole like I have right there, or, use a little EQ, change your tips. It really wasn't nearly as bad as people said it was. And it's surprisingly good. And someone just posted on this one as well a couple days ago saying, hey, I just picked up the VX and it is really, really good. I don't know what people were talking about. So yeah, I keep going back to that one as well, just because it is truly really good. And it got kind of a bad rap right at the beginning. But for those of you who picked that one up, I think you ended up liking that one as well. So hang on. So before we switch out to the higher end, so let's talk about a couple that didn't make the cut here. And one, the KZ ASF. So I thought the KZ ASF was going to be the sweet spot on their BA only sets. I thought it was going to be close enough to the ASX that people would have bought the ASF instead of the ASX because it was just slightly cheaper and would have had a sound that was close enough. And after hearing the two, I think there's a pretty big gap there. And what KZ sort of did was they let the ASX be discounted a little more than the ASF. So the price of the ASX dropped closer to the ASF. And I think that hurt sales of the ASF. So that one didn't make the list. I think you should just skip over to the ASX on that front. Another one that's not here, the Tin Hi-Fi T2 Plus. It's a fine set. I think for people who are familiar with Tin Hi-Fi's house sound, if you like that house sound, the T2 Plus was a great choice. It just, personally, it wasn't my choice. So that one didn't quite make the list. So on the higher end, I don't do too many of these higher end models. So these are essentially the two that I had that exceed almost the $100 mark. And like I said, the ASX didn't quite go there because KZ had some pretty attractive discounts on it. But I do really like the ASX. I know people had a ton of problems with it. I never really understood if that was a quality problem, a source problem, people just didn't like the tuning problem. Either way, I think the ASX either hit people in the right spot and they really loved it, or they absolutely hated it. And it's a shame because it was actually quite expensive, and no one wants to spend that much money. I don't care what country you're in. It was a lot of money. If you were up in the $90 range or even $80 range, it's a lot of money to be unhappy with something to that extent where you hate it. So I like it. I don't know what to say anymore about that one other than, it was very divisive, and it'll probably continue to be divisive. But when you look at the sales numbers on AliExpress, it actually sold quite well. And so it's kind of hard to say whether there's that many people really hated it, or the small number of people who really hated it were just a vocal minority. But really strange one. But again, I will keep going back to the ASX because I do prefer that one quite well to the ASF. So another one that people didn't necessarily like or want to review, this is the TRN BA8. And some people hated this one out of the box because it has such a hot treble. It's a bit too bright. Again, it's another one where let it burn in a little bit, change your tips. It actually looks just like the VX, but this is the BA8. And it just got another bad rap of where kind of out of the box, too hot, don't bother. And then the people who took a chance and bought it really liked it. And if you go back and look at the comments on my video review for that one, you'll see that there were some people who really, really liked the BA8. And I think going forward, you'll have this slow burn of people who pick up the BA8, perhaps as it drops in price a little bit. But it is really good. And again, it has this amazing staging that TRN did in 2020. And the BA8 kind of followed after the VX, and they both have that similar staging. And it's just really, really nice, especially if you're into closer, more intimate vocals, and you weren't a fan of the V90 vocals that were a bit far back. Those don't happen on the VX and the BA8. So those are, kind of a big reason why I like the BA8. But, again, the other problem with the BA8 was it was quite expensive compared to the VX. I think it's probably a good double the price of the VX. So if you have the VX, I'm not sure I would spend all the money to get the BA8. If I had the BA8, it sounds just as good as the VX. So maybe not pick up both of them. But, as far as having one or the other, I think they were both solid choices that just got a bad rap right at the beginning because of a little brightness or a little harshness out of the box. But let them settle in a bit, and they sound great. So another quick category that I deal with. So wireless. I actually kept using the Z1. It's my Z1. This is the SA08. I actually alternate the two because the battery life on either one of them isn't all that great. So I would use one day and use one the other day, or switch off depending on how much I was using it that day. I mean, you're looking at about 2 hours max. Mine doesn't hit 2 hours anymore because mine is kind of old. This one is closer to 3 hours, so we'll see how that degrades over time. But, I think they sound great. They just have horrible battery life, and KZ will be haunted by that fact, even going forward with the Z1 Pro, which has a stated run life of 2 hours. So we'll see how that one works out. So another TWS that I just got that I have not tried or taken out of the box, this is the new TRN T300. And going forward into 2021, you're going to see a lot of this. This is the Bluetooth 5.2 version. So as manufacturers are shifting towards Bluetooth 5.2, it's slightly different in that the two buds don't necessarily have to communicate with each other anymore. So the circuitry gets a little lighter, a little easier. Your phone will actually directly communicate with each bud, so you save a little bit of power. Makes it easier for manufacturers to put them out. So we'll see how that all works out as far as the real advantage of Bluetooth 5.2. Does it really save any battery doing it in that system versus the old system where the two were paired to each other? So another nice thing about the T300, this is Qualcomm aptX, so it costs a bit more to license that, so it's no wonder that this guy is a bit on the pricier side compared to these two. So heading into 2021, it's going to start off with, I think, essentially these three. Maybe that SENFER KP580 first. But so TRN T300 wireless set. This is the KB Ear Believe. I did a quick what's on the box version of that. But absolutely beautiful shell. Nice black metal shell with this electric blue carbon fiber pattern, which is super nice. Brass fittings, LitzOCC cable in the box, in the case. So very much looking forward to Pure Beryllium Believe set. And another new one that I got, this is the CCA CS16. I know a lot of you were waiting for reviews or some kind of word as to what this one was about, because CCA released it but didn't really talk about it too much. And it's actually on the more expensive side as well. So very nice aluminum faceplate, the shape of it, a couple BAs hanging out right there. There's the rest of them right there. So it is a crazy shape when you look at it from the side like that. From this, it looks a little more normal, but look at the extension on that nozzle. That's up there. So this one's going to be pretty interesting. I think I saw there was one maybe review who just said this was the one that was better than the ASX, but that was literally one sentence by one person who I think seemed to be the first one. But there you go. CCA CS16, 8 BAs, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, 6, a couple more hiding in there. So CS16, again, very much looking forward to this one. And so again, thank you guys for tuning in to this long video, and thank you guys for tuning in through most of 2020, and we'll continue doing the same in 2021. So again, thank you guys, and enjoy your end of the year, and have a happy new year.